crafty friends, it's Jess from JessCrafts.com, and today I'm here with a 10 cards 1 kit video for the Cat Scrappiness Chocolate Lovers Kit. And I've shown an unboxing of the kit, which includes all of the ingredients in a more detailed look, so if you're interested in what came in the kit, please check out that video. To get started, I wanted to do a simple card just to kind of get the juices flowing, as I always make a bunch of cards, and sometimes starting simple is easier. So I took the cross-stitched dies, the rectangles from Cat Scrappiness, and I cut about a medium-sized one out because I found this Happy Valentine's Day cutout in the paper pad. There was 2 sheets in the paper pad that you could cut apart to make sentiments and elements on a card. So I cut all of those apart and put them in a little bowl, and I'm going to use them throughout the video. So I picked 2 pattern papers, one really simple, the pink that I cut the cross-stitched die out of, and then one that's a little bit more busy but brings back the flowers that are featured in the cut apart or the sentiment there. To add a special touch, I use the glitter washi tape. The glitter washi tape is really easy to work with, and it's really excellent quality because the glitter doesn't fall off. Even if you rub it like really aggressively, it doesn't come off, and therefore I can use it for cards that I donate. Now, to stamp the stamp set in the kit, I used frayed burlap, vintage photo, and Lawn Fawn walnut. So there's the distress oxide inks and the frayed burlap and vintage photo. I found that when I stamped all 3 layers in distress oxide, I did not like the way it turned out, and I needed to add some regular dye ink to go with it. I'll also say that regular dye ink does take a little bit longer to stamp. I also stamped a whole bunch of them at one time in a stamp positioner tool. So I placed the bottom layer down, and then I stamped it, turned my cardstock, stamped it again, and did that on 3 pieces of cardstock. Then I added the next layer. So by stamping 6 of them at one time, I was able to get a lot more production for my time, whereas if I had to load up the stamps every time, that would have taken a lot longer. So I decided to just stamp and cut a bunch out, and I used my scan and cut to cut them out, but I made sure to put it on color mode because the image that I wanted to cut out was fully in color and there was no black outline. This next card was inspired by a card I made off camera, and so I wanted to show it to you to kind of give you an idea of how I might have done that off camera card. Although that one is pretty simple. I have the 2 strips of glitter washi tape, and then I stamped the chocolate bars onto a big piece of cardstock and cut it out with the Wonky Hearts die. So that's that card on the left that I wasn't able to show in a video. It was before I started video and I was just experimenting. But the one on the left there, you can see what it looked like when I cut with only Distress Oxide. Sorry, when I stamped only with Distress Oxide inks. It just doesn't look great. The walnut from Lawn Fawn added a sharp detail to the top that made it look a lot better. So once I added the 2 strips of the glitter washi tape, I then die cut a heart, one of the wonky hearts, out of the center because I want to make this a shaker card. So I covered it in some acetate, and I'm going to put the chocolate bar behind the window. And I had a little bit of a tricky time positioning it, and I think the smarter thing would have been to position it before I put on some of my foam tape there on the side because the foam tape's kind of getting in the way. But it worked out. So I've attached the chocolate bar so that it's poking out the window. Now I will say, in this instance, the chocolate bar is inside with all the shaker elements, and so some of the shaker elements might get caught on top of the chocolate bar. If you don't want that to happen, then I would put the chocolate bar on the front of the card on top of the acetate and not behind it. But I kind of like the idea of it being behind it and maybe some sequins getting in front of it. To make the shaker card, I always just try to make a simple rectangle around it with foam tape, and I usually double up my foam tape so that it's a bit thicker and everything shakes around a little bit better. I wanted to add a sentiment, and I wanted to take advantage of the sweet die that came with the card kit. I wind up using the sweet die a lot, and that is part of the main card kit. I also use the Wonky Hearts a lot, and they are an add-on, but to me, they're an add-on that you're going to use over and over and over again because they're just a basic shape with a fun detail. So I think that add-on is worth it, and it's a good price. So I decided to use one of those little cut apart sentiments from the paper pack that said Valentine's Day and pair it with sweet. So it says Sweet Valentine's Day. I think it would have made a little better if it said Have a Sweet Valentine's Day, but there was nothing in the kit that had that particular expression. You could, of course, find it in your stamps and add that if you wanted it to be a little bit more cohesive. But you could also just use the word sweet. And I cut sweet out of some vellum. Vellum was included in the card kit, and in fact, this coral paper that I'm working on was one of the cardstocks in the kit. I decided not to make the cardstocks into card bases for the most part. I generally decided to use them as card elements. So like here for the shaker card, the background papers are made with the cardstock. And that's just because I personally don't own a lot of colored cardstock. I have a hard time trying to keep up, and I only like high quality cardstock. I've found that I don't like having the thin cardstock. I don't find it particularly useful, the colored thin cardstock. So I've, just haven't purchased a lot of it. And so I make a lot of white card bases. And then when I get cool pieces of quality colored cardstock in my kits, I tend to use them in other ways. So now I'm ready to finally assemble my shaker. With my piece of vellum, I did cover the back of it completely in double-sided tape, and then I ran it through my die cut machine so that it would be 100% sticky. To make my shaker elements, I am going to mix two of the sequin mixes from the kit. There's the chocolate truffle and the hearts of plenty, and I just put a little bit of each inside. I peeled off a whole bunch of foam tape, and then I assembled my shaker. Next up, I wanted to work with that sweet die again. Like I said, I just really liked it. I thought about trying to make the kit, like interesting things that you could do with the kit. I could show you how to make a bunch of cards with pattern paper because there is a really large, there's like a full-size pattern paper in this particular card kit, and it had 2 cut-apart sheets. So, if you've seen my channel before, like I do Doodlebug, use the whole 6x6 paper pad to just make cards, and I don't have to add a lot of extra stuff. So I could have done something like that, but I wanted to show you how to use some of the other cool things in the kit, like this sweet die. So what are some interesting things you could do with the die? So here I've cut out the sweet word from some of the pink cardstock, and I have cut it out a few times, and I want to create the look of a background not completely covered in the word sweet, but like as if it's kind of its own pattern paper with a lot of sweet, and to mix in the chocolate bar. So in order to achieve that effect, I don't have to cut out the entire word every time. I can just use parts of the word. So the second version of sweet, or the second die cut that I had of sweet, I am only going to use the EET and save the SW and put it on another part of the card, so that by using one die cut, I can stretch it across the card and save myself on some materials and die cutting time. So I'm positioning some of this without sticking it down, and then when I have a general placement idea, I'm going to start peeling some of the sticky tape off the back and adding those. So the sweet die cuts were, again, I covered the back of the piece of cardstock completely in double-sided tape, ran it through my die cut, and then I was able to peel it off quickly, just like I did with the vellum. With the vellum, that was even more important because vellum shows through the adhesive. Shows through vellum. So if you used a liquid glue, you'd get all these splotches under your vellum. Here, if you didn't want to do that, or you found that difficult to, go through the double-sided tape, then I would just use liquid glue to glue these down, and that would work great as well. I am having the little chocolate bars hang off the edge of the card because there is in the stamp set a wrapper that is meant to cover the bottom half of these chocolate bars, but since I wasn't going to show a lot of the chocolate bar anyway, I thought rather than going through all the trouble of stamping the wrapper to only show it a teeny tiny bit on this card, which is with the way the placement was going to work out, it was easier to let the chocolate bar hang off the edge and trim it so it looks like it was a complete chocolate bar, but instead it was just this partial stamp. I decided to add a bit more of the sweet because, like I said, I did want it to kind of look like a background here. However, it did mean that I had to lift up my chocolate bar a little bit there. So I always recommend, sometimes do as I say, not as I do, and actually wait till you have all your elements down before you start gluing things. But I don't know, sometimes I just go for it and, I regret that at times, but I usually can make it work. A friend of mine recently told me that you can heat up the ATG gun or like strong adhesive with a heat gun for a little bit. So if you heat up the element that you want to pull up and then you gently pull it up, it works more effectively than just trying to gently pull it up. I haven't used the trick much. Another trick I've heard is taking dental floss and putting it underneath the element and using that to help gently pull it off. So once I had all of the little partial sweet words stamped all over and the chocolate bars where I wanted them, it didn't quite look filled up. I probably should have die cut more sweets and covered the whole background truly rather than only covering parts of it. But I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it look like I intentionally did that, and that was my design all along. So I'm taking a lot of the word strips. I felt like those would probably fit in best and also could help me pair with the word sweet so I could try to make an expression essentially. So my card winds up saying XOXO, sweet, sweet hello. So they have the XXO at the top. Then I found a little die cut word that says sweet, put it in the middle so that, if you follow the die cuts, it kind of makes a message XXO, sweet hello, but there's a big sweet in between too. So I felt like it was really fortunate how well that worked out and made it able to look intentional. So I'll just put a little bit of ATG tape behind all of those. You could also choose to pop them up if you wanted, since they are laying over a bunch of these different bumpy elements, die cut elements. So I have this heart that I cut from that shaker card, and I kind of try to make sure that, or not make sure, but I tend to use leftover bits from one card as an inspiration for another card. So here I wanted to use it, but I wanted to do something a little bit silly or crazy perhaps, and I wanted to do an inlaid die cutting through the pattern paper, through the washi, through the cardstock, everything. I wanted this all to be completely flat and to lay the black word sweet in between all those elements so that it looked like one flat piece of paper. Now, you don't have to do this part, obviously. You could just put the sweet die on top of that and it would look great. And that blue pattern paper is from the pattern paper pack. And just, put your heart element on top of it, because I also cut a heart out of the blue paper so that I could, again, make it all look flat. And you could just layer them on top of each other. But what's kind of nice is now I have a blue wonky stitched heart to use for another card. It may be not quite worth it since I'm going to use quite a bit of effort to do this inlaid die cutting, but I think it looks really cool and it gives me some extra elements to work with. So here I'm covering my card base with a lot of adhesive. I could have covered all the elements with adhesive before running them through the die cut, but it does make them a little bit trickier to die cut, and I do want it to die cut really easily because I don't really have any room for error. If something is a mistake, then my elements won't fit in together. So that's why I'm opting to put the adhesive on the back. Be careful not to put adhesive where you're leaving that white border around the card. So only add it to the center, and then make sure to put extra where you're actually going to be doing all the little inlaid die cutting. So now this basically acts like a puzzle. I was able to put the blue piece down. I started by fitting in the large hearts, kind of that strategy that you do in puzzle making too, where you put in the edges because the hearts are essentially my edges where everything else is lining up with. Then I'm able to fit in the large sweet word and then easily put in all those little tiny pieces. The main thing with doing inlay die cutting is to just keep all of your pieces and make sure nothing falls on the ground as you're, moving your die cut plates around, etc., etc. But if you keep all of your little pieces, they should fit in relatively well. There's not really any trouble trying to get them all back in. You can try to be aware of not making yourself too teeny tiny of pieces, like there with that little tiny coral piece that completed the heart. But having that adhesive underneath certainly helps it to go a lot faster. If I was trying to add glue to each of those, I think I would have gotten a lot more frustrated and not enjoyed it as much. So I thought I was going to use the hello again because I know there was another hello there, but it really blended in too much with the blue paper since the blue hello is about the same color as that blue paper. And instead, I found another hello in this particular set of sentiments, and it had a black border around it, like it was a speech bubble with a border, but I didn't want the border, so I just fussy cut it out real quick. It was very simple to do. What's nice about the cut apart elements from the paper pad and the die cut cardstock elements is that both of them have a wide variety of sentiments, so you can make lovey-dovey Valentine's cards, and you can make sort of general friendship Valentine cards. So next up, I was ready for an easier card. I'd done a lot of like die cutting and shaker cards, and I just wanted to kind of pop something together real simple. So I took a new piece of pattern paper, and then I used this 2-inch strip floral paper that was from the first card. So again, I'm just kind of trying to use up my scraps. I used up the blue wonky stitched heart from the last card to pair with the die cut heart that came in the Diecutss pack. And then the little red heart with the XOXOs came from a cut apart piece, and there was a big red border around it, but again, I just sort of fussy cut it so that it looked a lot like the gold heart, but added a new pop of color. And so I'm just going to layer up these 3 hearts on top of the strip with the gold washi tape. So once those are layered on, if you wanted to make that card a bit more interesting, I think I would add some foam tape to pop it up, or you could go back and add some of the enamel dots around it. And I actually will go back at the end of the video and add some extra enamel dots to things. So next up, I wanted again to show some interesting things to do. Like I said, I really liked that sweet die, and you could die cut it a bunch, but here I'm basically going to emboss it. And so I took that rubber mat that is meant to turn dies into embossing and act as a shim, and I laid down the rubber mat on top of my Sizzix plates. I had to open up my multi-purpose platform, so look at for what your die cut machine does. I'm not trying to give you extensive directions on that, but you do need that rubber sheet there, and then you put the die on top of your paper on top of the rubber sheet. So die, cardstock, rubber sheet. Then you put it in your machine the same way you would an embossing folder, and it leaves an embossed suite behind instead of a die cut suite. And I thought that would be just a fun way to use the dies in a little bit of a different way. And I'm going to do the same thing with the wonky hearts later in the video, just so that you can see other ideas for what to do besides just continuously die cutting them out, because you guys know how to do that, and you probably know how to emboss it too. I'm not saying you don't know how to do that, just that just to think outside the box, present something a little bit interesting. So I'm covering that background with the Distress Oxide inks in Picked Raspberry and Wilted Violet. And I I embossed a bunch of sweets on the background, kind of similar to what I wanted to do the first time I was covering sweet on the background, or I was putting sweet all over the background. This time I did it a lot more, and it's on all over most of the background. However, I thought that spraying it with the ink, covering it with the ink would bring them out a bit more, and it kind of did versus just leaving it white on white, but it didn't have quite as dramatic of an effect as I would like. So I spritzed it with some water to again add a bit of interest, and I thought it was going to be like a really prominent background, and I wasn't going to have to add a lot to it, but I found that it was a little bit more laid back than I liked. And it kind of was hard to read the word sweet. So I decided to add another die cut sweet on top of it. And I did that with the mint aqua bluish sort of cardstock that came in the kit. I die cut it out, and I fit it perfectly over one of the embossed sweets. So you could save yourself some time and not emboss that one, since you're going to cover it anyway, or come up with a different design. But I didn't like it off center from one of them. I liked it fitting into the design. So I've put this die cut sweet perfectly over one of the embossed. It does cause the word sweet to hang off the edge, but I think that looks fine, and actually adds a bit of interest to the card. Then again, because I want to add a bit more to this card, I don't want to cover up too much of the background, because I do think it looks cool. It wasn't quite as much of a pop as I thought it was going to be. So I decide to add one chocolate bar along the bottom. I tape it down, turn the card stock over, and cut off the extra. I find that easier than cutting ahead of time. And then again here I'm thinking, well, I kind of can go back to that hello from before since I didn't use my sweet hello before, and now I can. And this means that since I have so many cards that say something simple like sweet hello, these don't have to be Valentine's Day cards, which is super exciting to me. They can instead be used for any number of occasions, and I can donate them any time of year. But I could also, put them at Valentine's Day, and they could be used for that, and that'd be great too. So now I want to try to use the Fabrica Decor enamel dots that came with the kit, and I wanted to play with them first because they were new to me. So I just took a piece of scrap cardstock and I started adding some of the drops. I'm not an extensive user of Nuvo drops, so I don't really know how these compare to Nuvo drops. I do know that they worked pretty well and simply. I didn't really want to squeeze the bottle too much. It started kind of flowing out on its own, but if you want a bigger dot, you can squeeze the bottle. My general tip with this is to just take a piece of scrap cardstock and make a bunch of practice dots if you're new to enamel dots. If you're experienced with them, then just go for it and you can take it right to your card. But I wanted to practice first. And also if you're new to the brand, like if you've only used Nuvo drops, maybe try a couple, practice dots with these before you dive right in, just in case it works a little bit differently. But I had a lot of success with them. They do say it takes a full 8 to 10 hours to dry, so I just put my card to the side and gave it all of that time to dry. It's not a technique to use if you are rushing and really want to get your card done. If you're in that case, you should just use the sort of pre-made enamel dots since those will stick right away. Although, if you're going to use pre-made enamel dots, you would want to make sure that your Distress Oxide cardstock or ink is really dry first. So here I have taped up the 3 wonky hearts together to kind of create a little like inlaid thing where they're inside of each other. And then I embossed it again. So it's kind of hard to see here with the way the light is shining on it, but you will be able to see it in the still photos. And this whole set of cards will be linked and featured at the Cat Scrappiness blog. And I'll leave a link to that in the video description. But as I move the card around, you can kind of see where those hearts were embossed. And this time, even though it's hard to see on camera, I actually thought that you could notice it more. And so I didn't feel the need to do as much stuff to this particular background. And I am tying a bit of twine around it because I haven't used the twine yet. At this point, as I'm creating, I'm trying to use things from the kit that I haven't used before just so that you can see most of the kit contents in action. Like that was the first time I used the enamel dots. This is the first time I'm using any of the fibers from the kit. And I haven't used any of those gold hearts yet either, so I'm going to feature them in this card. So I've just tied a little bit of the twine to the bottom. As you can see, I haven't adhered it down yet, which makes it easier for me to move it around. I've wrapped it around twice for a bit more interest. I tried to tie a bow, but mine was too short, so just add a little bit more if you'd like to do the bow instead. And so there, I've taped it down. Normally, I don't tape it down with painter's tape, but I couldn't find any other tape at the moment, so I just put down some painter's tape, and that'll do fine. Then I'm going to use the Hello Love die cut that comes in the little, the pack of die cuts. I thought, again, that would create a sort of general card, but be great for Valentine's Day. I will say there are a lot of flowers overall in this kit, and so it probably would be a little bit trickier to make a masculine card, and it totally depends on the kind of guy you're giving a card to. Here I'm going to use the glitter hearts, and what I wanted to make sure, so if you saw me, I was like really vigorously rubbing the glitter, because on the Cards for Hospitalized Kids website, it says it cannot be excessive to coming off. So I wanted to really make sure, even if I rubbed aggressively, it wouldn't come off, and then I was able to stick them in a little pattern around it. Again, they'll be stills, so if anything goes too fast, you want to take a longer look at the finished product, it will be there. So now I'm here making another shaker card because shaker cards are really fun, and this kit has a whole bunch of cool sequins in it, so why not make a second shaker? So I've doubled up my foam tape. I put down my acetate. I die cut some hearts out of the front. I'm skipping that part because it's pretty simple, and I'm focusing a little bit more on this is how I make my shaker. Like I lay down the two long pieces. Then I have a doubled up piece of foam tape that is a little bit longer than the width of my card. I push one side in and then butt it up against the other side and use my scissors to trim it exactly. So the key is to make your pieces longer than you actually want, so that way when you trim them up, they will fit exactly and create a great seal. And in this case, sorry, in this case, I decided to create compartments in my shaker card. A lot of times I will just leave it as one big square, but in order to make each heart look filled, I decided to instead make little compartments on the back there. So I just added some extra foam tape with that same method. Then I decided to use the Hearts of Plenty sequin mix. I know I haven't used the wooden heart wood veneers yet. I said it twice. But we'll get to those. I thought at first maybe I could put them inside of a shaker card, but ultimately decided that's not what I wanted to do with them. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a bit here. It's quite dry right now in where I am, so it's making it a little bit harder. So I've laid the shaker over the I've laid the shaker panel over the sequin bits. I try to be pretty generous with the amount of sequins that I add, just because there are so many sequins in the kit, and I think that makes them look more fun. And I want to go back to the gold glitter hearts because you get a whole pack of them. You get a whole bunch, so why not use them? Why not go all out and make really special cards? And, you know, you're going to be able to make 5 or 6 cards with even if you use 3 glitter hearts, so you don't need to be stingy with them. And that's what's awesome about this kit, because you got full size of everything. I didn't feel the same need to sort of like conserve, like, oh, if I really like the gold hearts and there's only 3 of them or whatever. That's not the case in this kit. I think there was like 12 of them. Then I pulled in the little die cut bee, again, just to add a fun element and a little bit of movement around the card. So now we are getting on to the end. I think this is the last card, in fact. I've created quite a few. Here to attach the doily, I'm going to use a dot adhesive roller because a dot roller won't leave adhesive in the holes of a doily. The adhesive will go right through and it'll go onto your work surface. Then you could have to just clean up your work surface a bit. But therefore, there's not that sticky adhesive through your holes in your doily. And the doily was one of the other parts of the kit that I hadn't yet used. Ooh, I think there's one more card after this, actually. I don't think, because I do use the wood veneers somewhere. Anyway, guys, sorry, I got to focus here. I put the doily down. I put a little bit of foam tape on top, and then I used this Happy Valentine's Day die cut sentiment that came in the Pebbles, I think it's Pebbles die cut set that you get. So here I'm going to use the wood veneers, I guess. I think that, I'm trying to remember, because I think I have another card with the wood veneers. I'm beginning to lose my train of thought. It's actually really early in the morning, right, where I'm recording this. So sorry if I'm a little fuzzy brained. And also, this is obviously a little bit of a longer video, and sometimes I start losing my train of thought after 28 minutes of talking to you. Anyway, so I wanted to keep this card simple. Again, I've made a couple complicated cards, and I'm going to go back to a couple simple cards. It's kind of how I do it a lot with my 10 cards, 1 kits. Like, I get a little bit exhausted after making a couple of more creative cards, and then I make some simple cards to go with it. That's how my brain works. To attach these, I'm just going to use like one of those like glue dot. It doesn't have to be glue dot brand, whatever you can find. You can just roll up the little glue dots or zots or whatever's available. And that holds on the wood veneers really easily. And I am going to use the Aqua Mint whatever cardstock from the kit for my card base in this instance, just because it was a simpler card, and so adding that colored card base really gives it a bit of a more special touch. So there is one more card, which I think this was me thinking I want to use those little striped hearts that I cut with the Wonky Hearts die, because, you know, if I did all the trouble of cutting them, why not use them up? So We're going to pull those in here, trying to think about how I could use them in an interesting way. At first I thought about just lining them up, but I thought that was a little too simple, and I wanted to use more of the wood veneer hearts because I hadn't used a lot of them yet. So I'm mixing the Wonky hearts that I die cut for my shaker card with the wood veneer hearts, and then I also wanted to add in the You're All Right pencil. That was one of the things that I really liked from that little Diecutss ephemera pack. So since I really liked it, I wanted to make sure it got onto a card in my 10 cards, 1 kit video. Now, obviously, I have like a ton of extra stuff. If you saw the unboxing video, not only do I have the whole stamp set still and the dies, which I'll be able to use forever, and you could make cards out of just those, I have like bags of sequins still. The bag of wood veneer hearts doesn't even look like I touched it because it's just stuffed full of them. So many of the little die cut elements still left. A whole bunch of the pattern paper because again, it was a full size pattern paper pack. It wasn't just a few sheets. So you're gonna get a lot more than 10 cards out of this kit. Sometimes when I get kits, I do struggle to make after about 15 cards, there's really not much left besides the stamp set and dies. But here with the pattern paper, there is quite a bit left. So it all kind of depends on your style. But again, I use those like glue dot zot whatever things to add those wood veneers. Now I'm just going to quickly flip through the cards that I created. Like I said though, there are going to be still pictures in the blog post. So if you're interested in seeing the cards a little more up close, head on over to the blog post in the video description below. When I recorded this video, the card kit was still available. However, I don't know if it will be once I post the video, but you can head on over, check it out. I will leave a link to the Cat Scrappiness store since, like I said, it was a Cat Scrappiness exclusive. Some of the elements in the kit are also exclusive to Cat Scrappiness. The add-ons are available separately. So even if you're not sure about the kit, but you really like those wonky hearts that I featured throughout, you can get those separately. Now, as I was flipping through the cards for you, I was like, I barely use those enamel dots. And those were super cute. I really like the way they turned out because, off to the side, I have this sweet card was drying. And so, I kind of knew what they look like. And I thought they were pretty easy to apply. I wasn't so worried about putting these on for donating. I looked at some of the rules again, and I was also making really small ones. So even if a kid did pop them off, I think it would be okay. And also they're non-toxic. So I don't really think it's a choking hazard as small as they are. So I think it's going to be okay. I would probably still be careful about certain things, and I'm not quite sure that I'll donate them. Maybe I'll use them for something else. But yeah, I'm always trying to think of those things as I create my cards. Anyway, once I added a few more cute little enamel dots, that was it for my cards today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more craft tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel and to the Cat Scrappiness channel, and there'll be links for both in the video description since this video will be on both channels, so you can pop on over for whichever channel you're at. Check out the blog post and the links to the Cat Scrappiness store. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this inspirational. We can't wait to see what you create. So be sure to share your card creations with the Cat Scrappiness team over on the Stamping Enablers Facebook group, which I'll also leave a link to because that is sponsored by Cat Scrappiness, and we'd love to see your inspiration there. Have an awesome, awesome day. Bye.